Stephen Timms.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I very much welcome the argument the right honourable gentleman has just set out, and I'm grateful to him for reaffirming his support for the £20 a week rise. And like him, I want to focus on this question of adequacy, because if this cut goes ahead, it will reduce real-term support for an out-of-work family to the lowest level since Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. Now, the economy has grown in real terms by over 50% since then, but the government's proposal is that support for unemployed families should not have grown at all over those 30 years. It'll be about 1/7 of average earnings, the support for unemployed families. That is, as I said in my intervention to the Secretary of State, the lowest proportion of average earnings it's ever been since 1948. The Secretary of State made no attempt to justify why it was so low. I invited her to do so, she didn't, and of course you can't. It cannot be justified. And actually, if you go back to 1911, when unemployment benefit was introduced, the House of Commons Library tells us it was set at a higher level of as a proportion of average earnings than that the system will deliver if this cut goes ahead. And the cut is going to take effect just as we're seeing prices surge, food prices, as we've been reminded in today's inflation figures, energy bills with the Ofgem price cap lifted as well. The Select Committee heard last week, as we've been reminded already, from a lone father of 2 children who told us what this was going to mean for him, and I quote, "The uplift sent some relief, and for that to be removed is going to leave us with that big question again. Do I go hungry? Do my kids go hungry? Or do we keep the house warm?" Somebody worrying about how to buy their next meal is not going to be able to focus on finding a decent job. Yep. Taking £20 a week away will leave the level of support below the basic minimum that is needed, that we require the system to do. The cut is going to hit working families, as we've been reminded, very hard as well. We heard from working lone parents. They'll lose £86 a month in their income, and this is what one of them told us. If one of the children gets a party invite, which some weeks is my worst nightmare because then I have to find the money for them to be able to do that, it's a kind of a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul all of the time anyway. There have been months where I have to decide which bill I'm not going to pay this month. You're constantly playing catch-up on utilities particularly. The extra £86 a month has allowed for us not to be doing that so much. And that is a parent who is in full-time employment. If this cut goes ahead, it will reduce support for working parents and unemployed parents below the basic minimum, which we all want people to have to enable them to look for a job, to look for a better job, to care for their children, things we all want them to do. We will instead be imposing grinding hardship on a very large number of people at a time of surging costs and inflation. And taking the £20 away, a week away now will mean that the level of support provided will be less in real terms, given today's inflation figures, than the support that was there going into the pandemic. The government has lost touch with what people are having to deal with. The Secretary of State's claim that you could make up the extra £20 a week by working an extra 2 hours is simply wrong. Governments do lose touch. This House must not. We must retain a recognition of the realities that people are dealing with. We need to grasp what this is going to do to families, even though ministers do not. It's not just here numbers on a spreadsheet. Half of those claiming universal credit only started during the pandemic. They are not returning to their former level of support. Many will have to get used to a lower income than they've ever had to cope with before. It's going to come as a very rude shock for those who were convinced at the 2019 election, maybe for the first time, that the Conservative Party understood what they were dealing with. Every former Work and Pensions Secretary since 2010, as the Right Honourable Member for Preseli has reminded us, opposes this cut. It's going to leave the system unable to do the job we need it to do. The House must reject this cut.